What's going on, guys? It's Everett DeLorme here, and it is Thursday, May 6th. Today is a special episode of the Volleyball Source podcast. You're only going to be able to catch it here in video form. The audio form is going to be over on FiveOne VB. The man who is joining me today, Dan the man from FiveOne VB. We're fresh off a great CEV Champions League Super Finals this past weekend. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're also going to preview the men's national team for the 2021 VNL season that gets underway kind of shortly, actually, like sooner than I thought, to be honest.
I know when I was kind of trying to work backwards and figure out when I should start these VNL preview podcasts, I was like, oh, I actually should just start them now. And I have to do 2 or 3 teams per episode because it starts so soon. But as always, Everett, thank you for having me. I mean, I'm sure a lot of our fans are the same people on both our platforms, so I'm sure all of them will catch it in one form or the other. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about little Champions League today. A lot of Canadian, so you're Canadian fans out there.
You're even repping better than me right now.
Of course, I got to bring out the Team Canada jersey for the podcast. I like these, by the way. This is not a regrettable purchase. It was a good purchase.
I remember when you got that VNL 2019. that was a good one. But yeah, let's start off by chatting about the Super Finals. You were lucky enough to be there. I got to sit here in this chair, and we obviously did the voice chat and chatted on the Discord. But overall, one of the best Super Finals I've seen in a while. I thought the women's match was phenomenal. Like, the women's match had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. It was back and forth. It was 2 heavyweights going head to head, and it was awesome. And then the men's match, just another great game. Zaxa coming out on top. So yeah, it was a phenomenal 4 or 5 hours of volleyball on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I think the viewing experience from start to finish was. I think we've heard a lot of good feedback. And I want to ask you, Everett, how was it? Because the TV production, how was it, sitting in front at home and watching everything?
I mean, the production in terms of the camera quality, like you were telling us that, it was going to be 180p, it was 50 megabytes a second, that was great. Like, it was a fast stream. Like, the ball wasn't choppy at all. On Eurovolley TV, it was really good. I mean, I think where my criticisms will lie.
Yes,
and
the usual.
I will say that they did utilize a baseline angle quite a bit more, and they had it in a lot of replay scenarios. So I found that side of it to be pretty decent. I'm not going to harp on the side angle too much. I know I beat it like a dead horse, so there's no need to say it. But I think it's tough. I would like to have maybe a bit of a better commentator out there, someone who knows volleyball, kind of knows what's been happening throughout the Champions League, who's followed it a little bit, knows about the game. After listening to Clayton Lucas for 3 weeks in the beach volleyball bubble and not being too thrilled with him then, I think he's a very good. I think if he was him and someone else, it would be a fantastic broadcast. But just him on his own, he doesn't know enough about the game to enthrall me. But luckily, that's why we had the Discord chat too.
Yeah, it's good. Find your own entertainment, and it's always tough to do a broadcast with one person. Even I think both of us have done it, or me very amateurly. But it is hard to keep people engaged and talking about stuff for 2 3 hours, even when we have great games. But yeah, I would say the women's match probably an all-time classic in terms of just how exciting the match was.
Absolutely.
Men's match was almost perfect, because if Zaxa had won that Polish league title, that would have been one of the most iconic volleyball seasons we have had. A Polish team bringing home the Champions League title, kind of the story of their team without any real big stars, and just the whole thing coming together. Everett, what do you think happened there?
Man, honestly, I don't even know. And that's one of the biggest things that's messing with my brain about this season, because after the way they dominated the first 2 rounds and got through, the biggest teams in the world to get to the finals, it just seemed like a foregone conclusion, especially the way that they had dominated all season long. They pretty much only lost when they chose to, against Resovia later in the season, And then in the finals, they just come out with, I don't know, they just came out flat. And Jastrzębski Weigel obviously had their number and had them scouted down to the T. And then I think they just outperformed for two matches. That's my opinion of kind of what happened. And maybe Zaksa was, maybe not as prepared for it. Let's say.
Yeah, and I think I've said on other podcasts and stuff before, I think that the fatigue factor was a little bit of a factor, especially with Zatorski being injured for part of the first game. And then, just playing so many games, those big 5-setters in the Champions League, something that Jastrzębski that did not have to deal with because they had withdrawn from the tournament. But even with all that considered, and the fact that, Tomasz Furnal, Jakub Popashak, and Lucas Campa, Yuri Glider all probably played some of their best games of the season. I don't know. I still think Zax is really kicking themselves over that. Also, at the same time, had they not gotten a bit of a wake-up call, a kick in the pants, maybe the superfinals would have turned out differently.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite true. Maybe they go in a little bit cockier against a Trentino team that, had something to prove. But, yeah, they had something to prove kind of from the get-go in that match. And, I mean, I think it pretty much went as we expected at the end of the day. I thought it was interesting that Trentino brought out Coy to start the match instead of Micheletto. Yes. But other than that, it was a classic Zaksa performance. They just dominated all around. Kaczmarek with some clutch aces right at the end. We're starting to see a theme there with him. And I'm going to stand by it. And I've said it before on the Discord and on shows as well. I would not be surprised if we see Kaczmarek lining up in Olympic matches opposite to in that opposite position. Because I've talked about it before, how I think, Leon, and I know this isn't the Poland show. I swear this is all I'm going to talk about it. But I think that maybe with Leon and Kurek on the court, you might have too much ego, right? You can you're only going to get the opportunity to set 20 some balls a set. Not every single one of them is going to be able to go to either of those guys. You've got to run an offense, and which one of those guys is going to take a step back from the offense? Whereas I think that a guy like Lucas Kaczmarek is going to go in and, like he did at Zaksa, do his job. He's going to block well. He's going to serve well. He's going to take the kind of maybe 14, 15 sets he's going to get in a match in an opposite position and be fine with it and still play efficiently. But, at the end of the day, having to choose between Lucas Kaczmarek and Bartosz Kurek right now for Poland is a pretty friggin' good position to be in.
Yeah, I think Kaczmarek's for sure making the case. I think it also would depend on who the other second outside hitter is beside Leon. Maybe if you have Leon and Bednorz or another or Semeniuk or another more offensive outside hitter, then you wouldn't need Kurek as well to especially with the middles they have too. But anyway, like you said, it's not the Polish podcast. We'll say that for later. But yes. Yeah, Kaczmarek did a good job. What do you think about Alex Śliwka, a man with a very quickly rising volleyball stock, doing all the news circuits in Polish media? What do you think about Śliwka's MVP?
I think it was a tough one to choose. Especially with that Zaksa team, they were just so even across the board. But yeah, absolutely. I think that Śliwka over the course of the season and over the course of that match especially was kind of their anchor in a lot of ways. But yeah, it could have gone to Semeniuk. You could have gone to Zatorski as well too. Maybe Toniutti with that. I personally thought it was going to go to Toniutti. If Zaksa was going to win, they were going to give it. They would give it to him. It would have been a great story as he wins the championship with the club that he's been with so long. He's heading on to the team that just beat him in the finals next year. So I thought that would have been a great story. But yeah, absolutely, Alexander Śliwka definitely raising his stock. I thought the moment though, where Semeniuk was doing the interview with, I guess maybe it was the CEV, and then Asia Voloj jumps in and gives him a big hug and picks him up and cheers. I thought that was one of the best moments of the weekend.
Yeah, I love those little moments like that. The players so happy after win like that. And the Polish players too. They've been through a lot together and probably go way back. And just little micro relationships, seeing I saw Śliwka and Lucarelli have a long conversation. Just seeing guys talk that you wouldn't really necessarily know are close or friends or what the story is, but it's really cool.
How about you? What did you think about the match? Like overall, obviously you had a bit of a different perspective than 99.9% of the people watching it. But what did you think of the match? Especially because you followed the CEV Champions League probably a lot closer than I have. So like, what was your overall thoughts about it?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, it would have been the perfect story had Zax completed that triple crown, winning Champions League, Polish Cup, and the Polish League. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But yeah, I mean, when you go watch live volleyball, it's always just the level is just so absolutely ridiculous.
I found
can't
that
even believe.
I found that the level of production overall, in terms of the in-stadium stuff, was great. Like the way you guys made the way the CEV made the arena look was fantastic, and yeah, it was awesome. I'm just repeating myself now, so maybe we should just move on.
Yeah, I'm sad though. It's another few months before club volleyball starts again, unfortunately. But we have some more exciting stuff to talk about here, Everett, and I think it's time for the meat and potatoes of today's pod. The Team Canada VNL 2017 World League bronze medalists. Could they do it again? Probably not, because I have them ranked a little bit lower here. 10th place for me is my ranking, Everett.
Okay. You know what? Well, how many teams in VNL again? 12?
16.
16. You know what? I'll take that. And here's why. Because we don't care about VNL. We care about what happens in August, right? And I think that in Team Canada's case, we're not a Poland, we're not a USA. Like, we don't have big superstar players, right? We have very, very good players, absolutely, but we have very, very good players who work in a system and execute as a team, and that takes time to build, right? And I mean, I think that you see other teams and other countries, maybe bigger countries, that are giving their stars a chance, some time off during VNL, maybe kind of taking some half and half rosters. But in Canada, we don't have the luxury to do that, right? Realistically, we just don't. This team hasn't been together in a long time. They haven't competed since Vancouver 2019. And yeah, like, there's going to be some things to figure out. Right, there's going to be some chemistry that's going to need to be rebuilt. There's going to be some young players who are going to be getting some opportunity. There's going to be other players who, obviously, we're going to talk about in a little bit, who are going to need to build some confidence up. So yeah, you know what? I will take a 10th place. Because I know that a 10th place with Team Canada and Coach Glenn Hogue at the helm means a 10th place where they are just going to take so many notes and learn so many things, not only about themselves but also their opponents, in order to get it done when it's crunch time at the Olympics in Tokyo come August.
Yeah, so that's a great overview, and I think Canada, maybe I'm biased because I follow the team so closely, but it almost seems like almost every spot on the starting lineup is up for grabs. Pretty much, I would say maybe Blue Hands is the safest. In Vigra, so the two guys who I would not pick out. Everyone else, Everett, I think could be seeing the bench in important games.
Is it time to jump over to the super sophisticated depth chart?
One more thing before we do that.
Okay.
I'll just go over the teams I had for everyone listening before this. We had China 16th, which, as if you guys haven't heard, replaced by the Netherlands. By the way, Everett, what do you think about Netherlands as a team in the VNL?
No, the Netherlands is a team that I always think is underrated. And I think that they're similar in terms of Canada, because all of their guys play elsewhere. But then when you think at their team, like, you've got Namir Abdelaziz right at the top of that team, if he's going to be playing with them. I don't know if he is. Can you confirm or deny? You don't know?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. But I mean, if he is, like, the Netherlands are they're going to be a difficult team. I mean, I think, what was it, World Championships 2017? That was the last World Championships we had?
2018.
2018. Yeah, World Championships 2018. Canada played them in the first match, and I'm really, really happy that we played them in the first match, because they weren't ready, and they were good, yeah. And then they beat France, I think, a few days later, right? So I think that the Netherlands are always going to be a good team, but I haven't seen them enough recently to think that they're going to be, a top team in the VNL. I think 16 is probably 15.
I'd probably put them 15, 16. Yeah. I mean, maybe Australia. Australia was my next team. Unfortunately, they're starting to lose some guys that have been parts of the national program for a while, and it doesn't really seem like they're replacing them. Like the one time you've heard of a young Australian player coming to the ranks, probably Luke Perry is the only guy, the Libero.
Lincoln Williams had a really good year at Con.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Right.
But I mean, opposites, the position they've always been fine with. They've had Thomas Edgar, Lincoln Williams, Paul Carroll. I think the thing is the rest of the positions. It was James Weir, who played for
James Weir. Yeah, he's a middle guy. Played for Brandon. He was at
Brandon.
He was at Netzhoppers this year in Germany.
So yeah, not bad players, but for me, it's not like a great VNL roster.
They might pick up a few wins, especially with the VNL the way it is. They might pick up a few wins here and there, but probably not many.
Germany 14. Just because I think kind of the Bohm Camp and Christian Fromm kind of trio not going to play, and I'm not 100% sure if their replacements are super ready yet. They could finish higher. I mean, they have a solid squad. Got the young middles, Bremen Creek. Got my boy Ruben Schott, the young opposite Linus Faber. So some decent players, but again, kind of a weird roster. Some young players, some almost retired players. So we'll see there. One team that this was a tough one. Slovenia 13, the newcomer.
I think that is a tough one because I think Slovenia has proven themselves on the European stage many times, right? And they've been in medal matches. They've beat big teams. So I understand the logic behind putting them down there, but I would think, like, I would see them finishing higher. Pull an Iran.
And hopefully we see a little Rock Mazic, the outside hitter who I've been hyping up for the last 18 months now. So he better be good when he comes out. Mm-hmm. And also Slovenia is a team that I think will actually try really hard at the VNL, just because they're not involved with really too much elsewhere. I guess Eurovolley this year as well.
But they had to come through the qualifier last year, right? Or in 2019, right? The Challenger Cup.
But no teams dropping down for VNL this year. With China's withdrawal, I believe.
Hi, Rob. Rob St. Clair in the chat. Greetings, nerds. Notice me, Everett. Rob, of course, your partner on the CEV volleyball show.
Got a great show coming up tomorrow. And then the last two here, Bulgaria 12. Who had the great Volleyball Explained host Bogdan who agreed with that 12. He's like, yeah. He had the same reaction you had. He's like, yeah, that's fair actually.
Yeah.
And then Japan at 11, which I don't think is controversial, but I feel like some people are going to be surprised when they finish that low.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always the case with Japan. I think that a lot of people put a lot of stock in the World Cup sometimes. And
yes,
it's really an event, in my opinion, that's designed for them to win. And I mean, they don't need to qualify for it; they get to be the automatic hosts for it. And I mean, hey, don't get me wrong, I understand. Japan, they invest a lot in the sport of volleyball. They put a lot of money into it, and they've been one of those standard countries, in the annals of the sport that has been relevant for a long time. So I have no problem kind of giving them almost as much as they want because they run with it and they do things right. However, I do tend to think that sometimes their stock is valued a little bit higher than other teams, let's say. But 11, I think that's good for them. Once again, I think they might pick up a few wins, but ultimately most teams are going to be able to kind of overpower them.
And they're a really fun team to watch, which I think is what kind of draws a lot of people to them. Like I'd way rather watch a random Japan match than a random Bulgarian match, for example. Absolutely. Just because it's going to be there's going to be huge defensive plays. You're going to see some interesting setting. You're probably going to see a few more combination plays than you would see on a regular the average team. So
100%.
Definitely check out Japan. And then, of course, now we've come to number 10, today's podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's get into this depth chart, which I assume you're going to show
Yeah,
all our viewers on the screen.
Yeah, as we see here, it's super sophisticated, as basically an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm actually just going to zoom in because it, yeah. Basically, there's nothing new with the Canadian national team. And I think that's actually kind of one of my worries. Oopsies. I erased Shawan Vernon-Evans there a little bit. But yeah, I actually think it's one of my worries with the Canadian national team is the fact that the only like new person coming in is going to be Eric Lepke. But he's already, performed some with the team. He's played some Nations League. He played, other tournaments like that.
I don't know, Everett. I think you're overestimating how much the average VNL fan knows about Eric Lepke, which I can assure you is absolutely zero. And I think he's actually going to, get a lot of playing time in this year's Nations League for the first time. He's been in a couple matches, but he hasn't really played a big role ever. And I think you could really see Lepke playing a significant time, and I think impressing a lot of volleyball fans, impressing a lot of people, and becoming like one of those players to watch in the minds of the average volleyball fan. Which so far he's been a mostly Canadian and Italian league prospect. I would say.
You know what? You're absolutely right. I am probably a little bit not like I'm just like I know how good he is, and I know what he's going to be able to do. Right. So but I do agree. I think that this VNL, if we're going to jump right into it, is going to be the Eric Lepke coming out party. I believe that of all of the outsides, and we're going to talk here about the outsides in a second, because for me, only having 4 outsides heading into an event like VNL is questionable. Right, but I think that Eric Lepke is going to be the guy that logs the most minutes. Right, especially Perrin and Hogue and Marr. Maybe Marr hasn't played as much, but Perrin and Hogue played a lot of minutes this year, so they're going to want some time off. Obviously, a bit older guys, but yeah, I think this is going to be the Eric Lepke coming out party, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, sure. And like you said, 4 outside hitters, 4 very good outside hitters, so that's not a bad thing. But it seems like I felt like we had like this huge bounty of outside hitters to bring, and now we kind of find ourselves looking down with there's actually not that many guys to pick from here.
Yeah.
On, Everett.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw the retirement of Riley Barnes this year. So that's unfortunate because, I thought Barnes was kind of one of those perfect guys to help fill out the roster. He could play starting minutes, and we've seen him do that very successfully. But he could also come off the bench, right? We saw him on the roster last time they played in Vancouver in 2019. So I definitely think that he's going to be missed there, right? And it's that one I think really hurts because he's always been a very, very solid, reliable player, and I could see his career kind of spanning out like a guy like Toon Van Lankveld, and just kind of get out there. The other guy that we're also going to be missing and we haven't really seen around, didn't play anywhere professionally this year. And it wasn't at the NEP, so I'm not entirely sure if he's retired or not, but that's Jason DeRocco. And if you've ever kind of heard me talk about this team, I think that Jason DeRocco is a very, very undervalued asset to this team. And that when he's come in, he's always done a great job. But even though he doesn't get that many minutes, his role as a glue guy overall, and his role as the guy that will do anything and will work hard at practice and will keep the guys happy on the bench and on the bus and kind of around, like he's an energy guy for sure. And I really think the Maple Volleys are going to be missing that. Maybe he's going to be coming back, and I just haven't heard anything from it. I did just check his Instagram before this, and there hasn't been anything updated basically since the last time they played, other than the auction back in 2020. But yeah, so I don't know where Jason DeRocco is, and to be honest, that makes me kind of sad because, as I said, he's a very big glue guy to this team, and I think that with only 4 outsides, it's going to be difficult. I was kind of expecting to see maybe a guy like Brandon Coppers get thrown in there, but he's going to be with the next gen team.
Okay, so we won't see anyone from your next gen team potentially get called up to go inside the bubble at all for the second half, maybe.
I don't think so. I'm not entirely sure
because it's not really. Sorry, it's not really like a regular. It's not like a regular VNL season where you can kind of pick guys up and drop them off and exchange everything. You kind of got to lock in your roster, which is going to
Yeah.
be a bit more interesting than regular seasons, I feel.
Yeah, exactly. So Coppers is going to be on that next gen team. We can just jump. I'll just jump over there, and it's going to be interesting because he's really heading out a team that's quite a bit younger than him. So that's kind of the only guy that we can see who's within the system that we would be kind of throwing in there. Because guys like Jesse Elser, Brody Hofer, and Braden Friesen, even though they played at the NDP this year, they're not ready for Nations League, right? So it's interesting to me that the national team will be only going with four outsides potentially.
Yeah, and I guess it's just the way. I mean, I'm sure they have good reason for it. Discussed. The guys must be ready to play together. We'll see.
I will say that, you know what, I think that this Nations League might be, I think that this summer in general might be one of the best summers that we've seen from Gord Perrin in a long time. If we look back to 2019 and 2020, he was very injured. I mean, he didn't even play in the semifinal against Cuba at the 2019 NORCECA Championships. He started the match against Cuba in Vancouver, but we all know how well Nick Hogue played in that match, coming off the bench in place of Gord Perrin in like the first or second set, pretty early on. And but that was because he was battling an injury. And, I got to talk to Gord thanks to the Titans Volleyball Club a few months ago, and he was telling me that his body was feeling better than ever, and that if there's one guy who really benefited of having time off from COVID and having time to go home to BC, spend some time with his family, kind of relax a little bit, it was Gord Perrin. And I think that he's really he had a really great season this year at UFA, and it got only better when they got rid of Massi Mujai, who just kind of seems to be a cancer, no offense. And yeah, Gord Perrin, like, as soon as he left, he was kind of their bucket getter and was just dropping like almost a 20 on the regular. So I think that we're going to see a really good version of Gord this year.
Yeah, for sure. I think the last couple times with the Canadian national team, you could see he could barely jump. I mean, it was tough to watch him. He was still he's still a pretty good receptionist and server, but the attacking was not there. But yeah, with this year in Russia, the second half of the season, he's really been lighting it up, and I don't think he got much attention because his team wasn't that great, and as you said, the drama with Machi Muzai going to Perugia. But yeah, I'm excited to see him. But Stephen Maher, Everett, kind of had the opposites, where he was actually benched for a lot of the second half of the season.
Whoa, I wouldn't call it benched. He was the first. Okay. We don't really like. We're gonna have to do another show to talk about that whole situation, and maybe
I disagree with it, by the way.
100%. He was having almost a career year, leading them in points per set. While getting way less attempts than other people who, by the way, did you see that Instagram post that Milano posted yesterday about the four guys, like pump and iron? Did you see the size of, the weight that Mara was lifting? And then another certain superstar that I don't want to get in trouble for by, calling out, was barely lifting like 25s, like looking like me out there. Like, yeah, he can move and he can pass, but Mara really anchored that team throughout the first half of the season. And then they went out and got Tini Earnout, and it seemed like he was relegated to the bench. Even Luka Basic was coming out more than him. And It was just frustrating to watch because whenever he would come in, he would bring so much fire and so much energy. And obviously he's an absolutely dominant hitter. As I said, like, he was on this way for a career year in the first half of the season. And then that just got completely derailed by Piazza.
Yeah, I have to admit there are some times in volleyball where the coaching just doesn't make sense. I mean, we saw a similar situation in Perugia as well. We're just like, what could possibly be the justification for this? And I think the fact that, I mean, I like Earnout too. He's a great player, but I think Marsh, the body of work was better. And the fact that thing with Joanna Perugia, even when Earnout wasn't playing well, why not bring in the player that has proven himself and play well throughout the season?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I think Stephen Maher is poised to have a great Nations League. I think he loves playing with Team Canada, kind of more so than anything. And then of course Nick Hogue too, coming off a really, really strong season with Fenerbahce. So yeah, I think we know the main three guys of that core, but I'm really interested to see how Eric Lepke fits into that group.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Lepke was starting a lot of these games, just
I
for the fact that they
I
kind
would
of
hope
want to
so.
maintain legs with the other guys. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right. 5 middle blockers, Everett.
Five middle
We mentioned
blockers.
Graham Vigrass, one of the locks, I think, for any combination of roster you want to throw it for Team Canada.
Eh,
Like you said,
So sorry, I'll just add a little once you're done breaking it down there. Apologize.
no. I was just gonna say, yeah, Vigrass playing with Nick Hogue, the Canadian team must follow for Canadians this year in Fenerbahce. Um, I think you put Arthur Schwartz in the wrong position though, Everett.
Man, I don't think I did. You like once again like who was their go-to guy come the later in the match against Cuba, right? Who just came off statistically one of the best seasons as a middle blocker in the best league in the world, right? I think that Lucas Van Berkel, he had a great season at Durin. And absolutely, I think he's going to definitely get some minutes too. Dan Jansen Van Dorn, we haven't seen for a while. He was rehabbing an injury, spent some time at the NEP rehabbing with TJ. And then Danny Demyanenko is obviously a super. And, what I was going to say is that this is not confirmed whatsoever. Volleyball Canada has not released the roster. No one's been telling me the roster. Trust me, I've asked a few guys. And so this is just my assumption. Maybe there's someone on this roster that's not actually there. Who knows? Maybe we have an extra guy. I'm not entirely sure. If there's extra guys, I wouldn't necessarily know who might be one of the NEP guys. But I'm not entirely sure if we're going to be bringing five middle blockers, right? But this is what I think the depth chart would look like. But yeah, like Danny Demyanenko, obviously a super solid guy, had a really great season for Montpellier in France. But just a little bit shorter stature than those other guys, and not necessarily a guy that you're going to see competing against some of the top middle blockers in the world.
Yeah, well, I was more referring to Arthur Schwartz as an opposites this year as well.
I mean,
Playing right.
Oh, actually, you think he would jump in on
No,
the
no,
right
no,
side?
no. I was making a joke. But
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you never know. Demyanenko, though, yeah, I think it would be really interesting. He's kind of been on the bubble of the main national team program for a while now, and we saw him get a little bit of burn there in the World Cup in 2019. And like you said, him and Slater lit it up in Montpellier this year. Demyanenko, really fun guy to watch.
I think he's a perfect guy to have in a situation when we're playing like Japan. When we're especially if we're going to be playing that small ball that we can kind of do sometimes. Maybe we're going to see Stephen Marshall suit up on the left side too. Obviously, he played left side for Chaumont and always plays left side, professionally on the left side. So it's not necessarily that he's going to be in the lib position, but I think that against teams like Japan, especially. Maybe even Iran, where they're not necessarily as big and as physical, and they're going to go for more of a speed offense. That's where Danny Demyanenko shines, right? His ability to close blocks quickly and penetrate quickly as a middle blocker is really world class. If he was a few inches taller, he would be a fantastic world class middle. But he's just a little bit shorter than some of the guys at, say, on Serbia.
Yeah, going up against Lisa Natch. Put trash in. Serbia has like a bunch of guys on their bench too, but yeah, I think Canada's one of those teams. I feel like we're never going to be completely outclassed in the middle, but we're also not going to win games in the middle as well. And like you said, alluding to like what you said earlier, it's just a team effort, right? Like there's not really any superstars out of these middle blockers. Maybe Graham Vigrass is like borderline.
He's like if you were going to be giving him like a video game, he's like a surprising 88. Like a guy that's ranked high that you're not like, you're like,
I was thinking 88 as well.
Like Graham Vigrass, like as an 88, and then you're like, really? And then you're like, oh no, actually, yeah. He's not as flashy as some of the best middles in the world, but in terms of doing his job and doing what needs to be done and his knowledge of the game and overall skill, like, you know what? He might be one of the best overall, like all-around skilled middles in the world, but I mean, in indoor volleyball, that doesn't really matter for much because it's how specialized it is.
Yeah. And okay, let's go on to maybe the most interesting battle between two guys. It's been a real seesaw the last couple of years. Ryan Sclater, like joining Danny Demyanenko as one of probably the main guy in that duo. They're scoring a ton of points for Montpellier this year, really being a key part of that offense. Siobhan, a little bit of the opposite situation, playing in a better league, but in a much, much, much reduced role.
Yeah, like let's start with Sclater because that's the easy one, and I can keep my cool while we talk about it. Sclater had an absolutely fantastic season with Montpellier. They led the league, all year long, and I mean, really, realistically, they too kind of had that Zaxa curse. They came up against a Chaumont team that had just picked up Filippo Lanza. Right, and I know as much as we, I know as, but like, okay, no. Here, I'm going a different way with this. I know he's a scapegoat of the Discord. I know that he's usually brought up in a negative term, but let's not forget that he's a very, very quality player, right? And
but is he better than Stephen Marshall?
I don't think he's necessarily better than Stephen Marshall. I wouldn't say so either. But I think that when you infuse a player like that, who's kind of a big name, and into a roster like that with those Cubans, that it gives the team a new life, but it also gives the team a bit of a new look too, right? Because all of a sudden, going into that playoff series, Montpellier has no video on this team. They have no video on what this team looks like with Filippo Lanza. Hell, they didn't even know what it was going to look like with Lanza out there, right? And he's still a quality player that's going to bring, while absolutely, like, Marshall's overall skill would probably be higher than Lanza. Lanza might be a bit of a bigger weapon offensively, and especially with his stature of volleyball, you're not telling me that those young Cuban guys didn't have, a lot of respect. Not saying that they didn't have anything for Stephen Marshall, but had a lot of respect going in. I think it was a benefit for Cons to have played the Chaumont in the finals after they had kind of cooled off a bit. And otherwise, I really thought that it was Montpellier's to lose. Unfortunately, they did against Chaumont, but Ryan Sclater was one of their top scorers in the league all year long, and really, like, he drove the boat on that team, and he was the main reason that they got to where they were.
And very consistent. And another thing, I feel like people who haven't watched him play professionally in France, there's probably a lot of people listening to this podcast. Let's be honest, it's not the most popular league for the average volleyball fan. He's really improved quite a bit from the tape I saw. Like, he's really learning to use the block better. He's he's got his go-to moves that he's really relying on recently. Serve's gotten a little bit better. So I'm a big fan of Sclater. And we don't really have the same certainty with Siobhan Van Evans, because I think the last time I've seen him play volleyball is in October, November.
Yeah, other than getting a few sniffs, and it's really hard. Yeah. I mean, if it's always been tough with Siobhan, because he's always been a kind of one of those hot and cold players. And then we know that when he's hot, he's really one of the best. But, sometimes he's cold. We go back to the 2019 Olympic qualifiers. In Game 1 against Mexico, he gets the start, plays all 3 sets, and only scores like 2 or 3 points, right? So, he has the tendency to kind of disappear sometimes. And I mean, I also think we need to remember that he's only, 22, 23 years old. So he's still very, very young, especially in the terms of Canadian volleyball, right? When usually guys his age are on the next gen team, right? Other than Lepke, of course, right? But they go to university, they graduate, and whereas he's done a lot. Right, so this season for Perugia, he only scored 13 points in the regular season, which is absolutely mind-blowing when you consider that last year for Ravenna, he scored 309, right? And, I mean, I've been over this so much, but it was just like he was never even given the chance. He played the semifinals of the Supercoppa, or whatever the first cup of the year is in Italy. They beat Modena, and then he has a not-so-great start in the finals. All of a sudden, they put Ter Horst in, and that was it. And it seemed like he was just relegated to the bottom of the bench. I will say, though, and I've said this to you before, so this won't be a surprise to you, that watching him on social medias and the way he was interacting with the team and the fire that he would and attention that he would come in with, the rare times that we saw him, gave me hope that he's not completely emotionally crushed, right? But I absolutely break it down to the fact that Dragan Tavita is an absolutely old man and can't set the ball to 12'6", where Siobhan needs to hit it, right? He likes to set it fast. He likes to set it basically the height of the antenna, and that's not Siobhan has to play, right? And I think that his inability to set the right side was specifically shown when Massi Mujai came in, and that's kind of when that really confirmed my whole theory with that. because he wasn't able to connect with him and the similar type of player. Like we've spoken about it before. But so basically what it's breaking it down to is that I still fully believe that Shawan Vernon Evans can be a world-class player and can be maybe potentially one of the best players in the world, right? But right now, the focus for him, and I think one of the focuses for this team needs to be, how do we build his confidence back up? How do we get him back to the player that he was? I think the injection of TJ Sanders into the setting lineup, which we'll talk about in a second, is really what is going to help him blossom. Because you know what, if we look back to the best version of Shawan Vernon Evans, it is when TJ is setting that ball, when he's clinically dissecting the other team's offense by the way he's setting that ball, and he's just getting Shawan Vernon Evans not only one-on-ones that he's able to swing on openly, but also the type of ball that he needs. So yeah, I think another big factor for this Canadian national team is to rebuild the confidence of Shawan Vernon Evans, because you know that come August, he's going to be needed to block some balls. As good as Ryan Sclater is, and I absolutely have him ranked as the number one right side, you know what? If we go up against Poland and you've got Leon on one side, we're going to need a bigger block out there. And I mean, who better than Shawan Vernon Evans, who got to block him all year at practice?
Yeah, I think you went over the entire situation without saying anything too offensive there, Everett. So thank you for that.
I think I controlled myself very, very well there, and I think people on the Discord will be maybe a little bit upset that I didn't get more emotional about it.
Well, and I think one thing people may not realize is that you can still get a lot of quality touches on a professional volleyball team, even if you're not playing necessarily in every match. Like, what do you say? I would say only 15% of the touches they get are actual in-game scenarios. There's a lot of scrimmaging. There's a lot of serve receive. There's a lot of drills. Not everything they do is just the games you see it, especially when they're only playing once or twice a week. There's a lot of practices in between those. The question, I guess, is with all the opposites they had on the team this year, with the Tennessevich and Terhorst and Machimuza, was he actually in a lot of the scrimmages, which is a big question. But Everett, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a sec.
Uh-oh.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Let's do this.
2028. Who's going to be Canada's most important player, Eric Lepke or Shawan Vernon Evans?
Damn. That's like, you're putting me in a position that I've never even thought about, because like there's other people who are going to be coming up at that time too, you know? If we want to jump off this team, if we look at this next gen team right now, that is the B team, right? This is the next coming. Like, we saw that B team kind of junior team thing of this team kind of start up 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. In that time span, you have a lot of the guys who came up, Gord, obviously, Graham, Blair, TJ, Nick, and then the other guys kind of Van Berkel, Dennis Van Doren, and then the other guys kind of trickle in after that. But I think that this next gen team coming up, and of course Shawan Vernon Evans is a part of that generation, as is Eric Lepke. You've got guys like Jesse Elser and Xander Ketrozinski, who very well could be world class players in friggin' 7 years, dude. I thought you were gonna throw me the 2024 question. And
2024 might have been.
you just blew it out of the water and sent me to LA in 2028. If we're going to talk about 2024, I think that Lepke might be, I think we're going to see a Stephen Amar, Eric Lepke left side duo. I really do. And you know what? I think that's not taking anything away from Shawan Vernon Evans, but I think in 2024 we're probably going to have this exact right side duo, maybe with the injection of a guy like Xander Ketrozinski as well, who's on that next gen team, and I think that he has tremendous potential and upside, right? So, but I think that Lepke is going to be a special player on the left side for this team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's sure thing right now. And Eric Lepke came out of the gates flying this year in Italy. It was so impressive to see, and I think the Italian fans have noticed. Now it's time for international fans to notice.
Do we know
Should
where
we move on
do we
to?
know where Eric Lepke's going yet? I know we're jumping off the national team kind of vibe here, but like, do we know here where he's going yet? Lepke, if you're listening to this, can you let me know? You told me when I spoke to you that you would let me know once you know. So, like, I've heard some different things, but I'd like to know where he's going.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I'm excited to see.
Yeah.
All right. Another interesting position for me, at least, is setter. And I feel like you more than anyone have a really good kind of feel on the Canadian setters right now, because even for me, who follows the team quite closely, it was kind of tough figuring out what's going on with Brett, what was going on with Jay, and then we hear TJ Sanders. You've done podcasts with him. He's been on a couple other podcasts. Is planning on actually playing volleyball. I'd almost thought he'd retired. So what's the setter situation right now?
You know what? I think the setter situation is kind of an open book. You know, I do stand by this depth chart I have. I think Jay's the number one. He's shown that time and time again. Brett had a very strong season playing for Halkbank. Obviously, Jay was at Izmir with Coach Hogue. So I think just that connection there. You know, I don't see Glenn Hogue not prepping Jay Blankenau all season long just to be able to succeed at the Olympics. For me, it's going to be, how is TJ Sanders going to fit into this lineup? And the reality is that I don't know, right? We don't know how healthy he is. He doesn't even know how healthy he's going to be. The fact that he's been able to do 2-a-days at the NEP is absolutely massive. I suspect that I will probably do an update with him at some point just to figure it out. But I mean, it really can't be undersold how important TJ Sanders is to this team on a lot of levels. And I mean, if you want to, we can chalk that 2017 World League bronze medal run basically to him and his team. And I mean, we touched a little bit on it in my podcast with him about that was kind of as he was just figuring everything out, you know, and as he was like figuring his game out, and then, you know, as he's preparing for the 2018 World Championships, that's when things started to break down with his back. But the reality is that his injury is one that can't really be healed. And so it's really going to be about managing it. So that's why I think that the trio of setters is really going to be important. And that's what I think that makes Canada such a difficult team to play against, is that I think every setter brings the team a bit of a different look and a bit of a different demeanor, you know, and I talk about it a lot. I really think that the setter is the closest thing that you're going to find in any sport to a quarterback. And that, you know, it's widely known that the quarterbacks are the most important players in football. And I really think the same is true in volleyball. I think that your team is going to take on the demeanor of the player who's going to touch every second ball. You know, they're touching a ball every single rally, and how they're able to manage the emotions of the moment, the emotions of their teams is really important to how a team plays. And I think that, you know, one of the benefits that Team Canada has is that, as I said, this team has a bit of a different look given who's out there, right? The speed that we play with and creativity that we play with Jay Blankenau is absolutely incredible. TJ Sanders is going to be out there, and he's going to dissect you mentally, and, you know, almost know what he's going to be doing over the course of a set, like a chess match, and the best ways to dissect that team. And Brett Walsh is a bit of a mixture of the both, with adding in some very, you know, exciting athletic setting, right? So I don't think you can go wrong with any of the three. It's more, how do we apply them in different scenarios?
Great points, Everett. And I think there's a lot to go over there, but I think when you talk about Jay Blankenau versus Brett Walsh, I think it's good to point out that Jay did have, I think, the much better season.
I mean, he's on the top of the depth chart for a reason. The only way TJ is at the bottom, or only reason TJ is at the bottom, is because we just don't know, right? We don't know what he looks like playing volleyball, because we saw him in a one-match scenario against Cuba, and we don't know how healthy he's going to be. But yeah, I think that Jay is going to be the go-to guy from the get-go. And then we're going to see how the other guys fit in. But I mean, another thing to think about too is that if TJ is healthy, maybe we let him run a little bit, even if he's not, even if he has to knock a little bit of rust off, just because Jay did play probably literally every set for Arcus this year. I mean, he was their team. He was scoring points on his serve. He was scoring points every match offensively, right? I don't think that there's a professional setter in the world that scores as many offensive points as Jay Blankenau, right? And that's why, like, the creativity of the offense when he comes in, and the fact that second ball is always a possibility and also always lethal with him, gives the team another dimension that most teams in the world just can't.
Yeah, Jay is always super fun to watch, and I think it was on your podcast that TJ was talking about. Oh yeah, I'm finally jump serving again. I can finally won't have to do the standing float. I thought that was hilarious, but it is a little risky to rely on a guy that is really proud of the fact that he could now only just start jump serving again.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why I think that the trio of them are really going to be working together for the majority of the matches. That's what I would like to see anyways. Who knows? I'm not Coach Hogue though, and we all know what of a genius mastermind he is, so I never kind of question it.
Yeah, no, I think you said everyone will get a shot, and which of them works the best with the lineups that they put out there. And finally, last but not least, the Libero, which I think is a pretty easy discussion here. Only really two guys that you have in your depth chart. Blair Band's going to be the start of the perpetually underrated Blair Band. I even get comments on my top 10 Libero video still being like, well, who is this? Who is Blair Band? I've never even heard of him before. And I'm like, this is the state of Canadian and American liberos playing overseas and Australian liberos.
You know what?
So they so underrated.
Absolutely, you 100% said it, right? Because the reality is that the best leagues in the world, Poland, Russia, Italy, all have foreigner limits, right? And if you are going to spend your foreigner on a libero, they've got to be damn good. And not only do they have to be damn good, but do they have to have a big name and big credentials to them. I know Blair Band has that 2017 best libero in the tournament at the World League. But other than that, because we don't tend to stat liberos, just another one of my qualms with this sport that we both cover. We don't do any stats officially. Every team has like a full stats department that works continuously throughout the game, and we spend so much money on it in volleyball, and then it doesn't transfer over to the professional and broadcasting side. But we will not touch that. But whenever like best libero stats are often just given by like an eye test. Right, and it's just kind of like, yeah, we know Eric Shoji, we know he's really good, and nothing's saying against him. But I think that sometimes Blair Band is one of the best in the world, and sometimes he's not recognized for that. I am very excited though that he's signed with Friedrichshafen next year. That is going to be huge. He's going to get to play some Champions League matches and really going to show off what he's got.
Yeah, I love that he's playing in Champions League, and yeah, like you said, we need to move to the 3 or 4 points passing skills. It's just a lot better and a lot easier to understand for everyone. And I think the thing with liberos in the top leagues, they're going to prioritize reception, especially in a league like Italy, where the serves are coming huge every single match, every single serve. And Band is great at reception, but he's probably a little bit more of a value in the backward defense, floor defense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's not Satorsky out here or Grebenikov, who's going to be taking up a large position of the court in serve receive. And I mean, this part of the strength is if you look at that outside core, every single guy on that roster can pass the ball, right? So Bland isn't necessarily looked at to being the taking a huge chunk of the serve receive, but defensively and the way he runs the team out of system as well, he's absolutely world class, right? And like if you like watching Jania Grebenikov play, and he's very energetic, he tracks down balls, like it's very much the way Hurricane Band plays.
Hurricane Band, all right. Another player with a good nickname, the Ice Cream Man. I think you might have even come up with that one on Stephen Marshall. Is he still? How was his injury? Because if you referenced it earlier in the podcast, but he didn't play in the last few games.
I'm pretty sure what he told me was that it was a torn oblique in his side. So He was
Sounds painful.
Yeah, he was trying to see if he was going to be available for the finals even. So I think that's something that just may need a little bit time to heal, and that he should be good kind of later on in the year. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big question mark for the team, especially because, as I mentioned before, he might be a guy that could slot in to that fifth left side position. Obviously, he just played the year in France. I mean, hey, let's go back to the 2015 Norseca Grand Champions when he played on the right side and Canada beat the States like fully loaded in the finals, right? So we all know that Stephen Marshall's an absolute baller, and whether he's wearing the same jersey as everyone else or not, he's going to go out there and play hard.
Yeah, I think we were talking to Discord about trying to think of a player who's played both opposite and libero, and I think he was the only one we could come up with.
Yeah.
If say Marshall can't play because he's injured, and we have to bring a second libero, who would be the next guy up here?
Tyler Kozlowski, maybe. I know he's been with the
the
national team in a while, and I think that might be a bit of a stretch. But ultimately, if you're going through the national team, actually, here we can do this. We'll just jump over to the Volleyball Canada website real quick and look at what they have posted at the national team. And I mean, you guys got guys like Justin Duff and Jeremy Davies on this roster who haven't played volleyball in a little bit, but that would basically be the only sorry, I'm blanking here. The only other Canadian libero that I can think of is Tyler Kozlowski, who has been, at this point, you can almost call him German by the fact that he's only played for one club and owns a coffee shop in Lüneburg, right? But yeah, that's why I'm saying that our depth chart right now is very shallow, but that next generation of kids, if you're looking at a guy like Justin Louis, Justin Louis might be he might be the truth, he's going to be something special. I really think so. I've never seen a libero make reads quite like him. He almost knows what's happening before it happens. And I mean, he went to Stanford on a full ride academic scholarship, so he's smart.
Yeah, I think I need to go check. Yeah, I mean, I've heard his name a million times. Obviously, I think Josh did a podcast with him as well at some point that I listened to. Definitely a really smart guy. Yeah, our next libero, hopefully. So before we go on to our next team here, which Everett's going to go over here quickly as well, do you want to do a couple? I have a couple of questions for you to put you on the spot here a bit.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Who's going to win Nations League?
Depending, how's Serbia's roster?
Well, remember, they I feel like they always sent their B or C team. I don't know.
They have this thing. Back in 2016, they won World League, and because they had their friggin' roster, and they were like, "We're going out to win it because we're not at the Olympics, and we're going out to win it," right? Whereas,
it's very similar situation this year.
That's exactly what I'm saying, right? So that's why I'm wondering, what's their roster like? Do they have their guys? We have Antanasievich, we have Putke, do we have Lishniak? Is it going to be their guys, or are we going to be seeing what's his face from Skra out there?
Alexander Oklich?
No.
Dusan Pekovic.
Dusan Pekovic, But I mean, I think that you have to look at Brazil always. And I think you have to look at Poland. For me, I think everything's going to be coming down right now to either Poland or Russia. Those two teams are going to be stacked, depending on what athletes they bring to the tournament. And to be honest, I haven't really looked. Both of those teams are kind of picking from a wealth of players, right? I don't know if other teams can keep up on the same level as those two teams. So I really think it's going to come down to Poland and Russia. I mean, I think there's going to be plenty of other good teams, but I mean, Poland was is Leon going to play Nations League? Do we know that?
I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure Poland's going to split their roster up somehow, though.
Yeah. So
they have enough players to do it.
Absolutely. I've seen people talk about it. I think that it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the USA this year without Aaron Russell or Taylor
That was such
Sander.
a huge blow.
Right?
No. Taylor Sander.
No,
I think Taylor Sanders is going to be fine.
So you're right. Taylor Sanders is going to be fine. He is fine. He's just, nursed kind of something all year long. But yeah, having no Aaron Russell and having that P2 position be a question mark for the USA is an absolute huge blow for them, right? Do you move Anderson over to the left side? You put Patch in, right? Do you go to Garrett Megatia, right?
No.
Do you
No.
or do you go to TJ DeFalco?
I'm going to DeFalco or Jayski for sure, especially because you saw Jayski play an entire season.
Yeah.
Maybe not prime Jayski, but pretty close to it.
So you know what? I think the U.S. is definitely going to be an interesting team to watch as well. But I think that without Russell, I don't know if they have enough in the tank to take down Poland or Russia or Brazil.
Because I think everyone like looking at USA. Okay, this is the year. Definitely gold medal contender, and without Russell, both of us will probably talk a lot more about that as we go into the summer and throughout the summer. But devastating, absolutely devastating for the U.S. And then my next question: what player do you think, you can't pick Eric Lepke for this, by the way? What player do you think fans are going to start knowing the name of after this Nations? Because I feel like Nations League, it's kind of how we find out about these young, like the next generation talented guys. Like found out about Shawan a couple years ago, Yuji Nishida a couple years ago. I feel like it's the introduction for a lot of fans to new players.
Well, I mean, I feel like that one's a hard one for me because I don't know the young guys coming up as well as you do. Right? Like I could probably only really go with an Eric Lepke, or if you don't already know who Arthur Schwartz is, maybe Arthur Schwartz. Other than that, like I
should have said you can't pick a Canadian.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really know. Like I don't know the in-depth rosters of all of the different teams like you do. Like is Semeniuk? Could Semeniuk be considered into that because he's never really played on the national team? Like we've, as Adnus has said before in the chat, that like, yeah, absolutely. Like we've never really seen Kamil Semeniuk suit up on the national team, and only in situations where it's like a kind of a C or a B team roster, right? So I think that we're going to see him, especially after the year he's had, see him suit up and do some good things. He can be someone, but I'm going to throw that one back to you because as you know the guys way more than I am, so I'm interested to know who you think.
I mean, obviously, we have to see the full rosters eventually. And also, shout out to a video I posted on YouTube, Top Prospects in Volleyball. So check that out. But I think one guy who's clear is that's going to get a big chance this year and who's already being hyped up a lot is Ron Takahashi, the Japanese outside hitter, who's kind of being dubbed as the third piece of the puzzle between Nishida and Yuki Ishikawa, which, in my opinion, that's the second outsider is probably the last position they needed, given the rest of their roster. But definitely a guy that's very, very similar to Ishikawa, kind of undersized outside hitter, but extremely technically adept and also very, very strong athlete as well, even though they may not lift a lot in the weight room. there's other parts of athleticism. Also, I've mentioned him before, but my Mr. Rock Mazic for Slovenia, I think is going to be a future star going forward, and I really hope that news comes out that he's going to be playing in Italy soon.
You know what? I'm going to come back. I think that if Mattia Bottolo is on the roster for Italy, I think that Bottolo is going to come out and do some things. I didn't watch a lot of Padova this year, but when I did, I was like, who's this kid? Like, where did he come from? I think that if Bottolo's on, wearing if he's wearing the Azzurri blue, that I think he's going to be doing some special things out there.
Yeah, I think I like Bottolo when he was out there, and I hope he does get some playing time. But I mean, I would say Micheletto, maybe it's kind of cheating, but he'd probably be the more because he's already starting in a Champions League or playing in a Champions League Super Finals. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I just don't see Micheletto being as effective at the national team level as he was for Trentino, mainly because, especially when you're looking at Italy, they don't have that big right side who's going to be able to take a lot of pressure off him in terms of, like, when you're playing on the left side for Italy, you need to take a bigger load than playing on the left side for Trentino.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe Micheletto's not quite there, but I have to say, after watching him play in person and being around him, that guy is like a future superstar in volleyball. He is unbelievable. And also, I don't know if it comes across on TV how big he is. Like, he's like taller than Marco Petrashin. And if we're gonna say like in the NBA, he's like, I would say he's like a 7-footer. Like, he is absolutely gigantic, moves so well for his size, and the fact that he's like, his attacking, skills, his attacking technique definitely not there yet. But that's the last piece of the puzzle. If attacking is the last piece of the puzzle and you're 7 foot tall outside hitter, that's like the recipe for one of the best players, I think, in volleyball, like in the next decade. I'm such a big Micheletto fan now.
Especially since he's a lefty too, right? Like
yes,
we have never seen a player like this. A player like Micheletto, in terms of his size, his stature, the fact that he's a lefty, that he can pass as well as he can at 18 years old on the left side for a team in the Champions League finals. You know what? And like he's replacing in that situation an absolute veteran, and one of the guys who they thought was gonna run the show for them for Dick Coy, in Dick Coy and Micheletto. Like when he stepped in there, when was it, the second set? Things turned around for Trentino in that Champions League final, right? So, yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. I think those young guys, I mean, it's tough to say. So many of these teams' rosters, it's either going to be teams getting ready for the Olympics, so it's going to be just their vets and their go-to guys, or it's going to be kind of a half and half. And so I don't really know. Maybe is Tim Grosjean going to be getting in for Germany? Is he going to be featured on that roster? He had a great year for Frankfurt this year, and what, Gregor Grosjean's little brother. Love to see. I've heard he's got a cannon just as much as his older brother.
Well, I would say Linus Faber is definitely the guy going to be the next up at the opposite position for Germany. Played in Friedrichshafen last year.
Okay.
Was one of.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Top scorer almost every match. Going to Italy next year. He's kind of been put under the helm of Andrea Gianni. He's followed him around the past few seasons. Gotten some personal coaching. He looks pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Be stoked to see him with Blair Band next season.
All right. And last one, Everett, before we end the podcast today, let's talk a little bit about Argentina, because I have them as my 9th team in the VNL. And as we know, I kind of put them here. There's a lot of history between Canada and Argentina. They've got the better of us in some tough losses the last few years, some unexpected losses the past few years. But I think they're a very interesting team, a very fun team. Another team with a few question marks, some young players coming up and some veteran guys who are close to retiring from the national team. Do you want to let's do some roster predictions?
Yeah, so that's where it's going to be maybe a little bit tougher with this roster, just mainly because we don't know who's going to be a part of it. Are we going to see Facundo Conte? Are we going to see Luciano De Cecco? Right? So far, like the only thing that we've seen come out from Argentina is their early training roster, and that was about 17 guys. And I mean, it's a whole bunch of guys that
we don't have to talk about those names.
Yeah.
Even I had no idea who those guys were.
Like I searched a few. One of them, like the setter Matias Gerardo, played at Nice this year in France, and that was a basement dwelling team. So not entirely sure, but yeah, when you talk about Argentina and what they can bring to the table, when you talk about Luciano De Cecco, when you talk about Facundo Conte, when you talk about that middle pairing that is Soleil and Creer, and then also too when you talk about Augustin Lozère, who had a great season for Tourcoing this year in France.
Well, I was going to ask, is you've kind of expert this season, but the Tourcoing trio of Augustin Lozère, Mateo Sanchez, and Luciano Polanski, another potential guy who may a lot of fans may not know, but I think is going to be a big player for the Argentinian national team going forward, the outside hitter.
I think. Well, is Polanski on the outside or is he in the opposite?
I thought he was outside, but he might have been playing. I'm pretty sure he's the outside hitter because Sasa Starovic was playing opposite at least the beginning of the season. Okay, yeah,
you're right. Because they have also, I'm pretty sure they have another Polanski on Argentina who's a lefty on the right side, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah,
they brought in Arpad Barotti later on. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think he was playing for.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Argentina is they're the one team, and I asked TJ on our podcast, is Argentina our kryptonite? He said no, which I respect that answer. I really do. Like, I think that is probably a real answer for him, and the way that he breaks down the game, which is much a higher level than I do. But for me, yes, they're absolutely our kryptonite. They are a very skill-based team, and they have such a high level of skill. And that's why for so long, especially at the beginning of the decade, Argentina was winning. Like they were winning juniors on the regular basis, and they were a top 10 ranked team on the regular basis on the junior level, and their overall level of skill. And I mean, as we saw it with how good they were at the World Cup when they didn't have any of their guys, and guys like Matias Sanchez, who's 5'5", is out there just slinging butter like no one else can, right? And so yeah, like Argentina is one of those teams that's so skilled that they're so hard to game plan against. And that's where it really breaks down for Team Canada, I feel like, because they are so skilled that like passing dimes for them is not that hard. You have to put a lot of pressure on them to break their serve receive. And then the fact that they're able to pass so well and they just run everything through Soleil and Creer and Lozère in the middle, like, it's very difficult. And like, no matter if it's Sanchez or DeCheco or, Uriarte setting for them, they always have a good option, especially because I always find that the Argentinian middles hit so differently. They approach way closer to the setter, and they create a lot of space by opening up their shoulders up and that way. And they just seem to be able to cut around our block, and they really just nullify us in the middle. So it's really going to come down to what team does Argentina have out there, because it's another team, we lost to them at the Olympic qualifiers in, where were we? Were we to Russia? No. Where did we do Olympic qualifiers? Was it
Netherlands maybe?
I can't even remember now. That was 2019. It was a long time ago. Whatever. We didn't get to host it. Maybe it was Korea. I think it was Korea. Doesn't matter. Like they just nullified us in the middle. So it really depends. Are they going to bring their guys to get ready for the Olympics, or is it going to be of a different roster? Given the fact that they've already named like the 17 players that they've named, I guess you can name like 24 to your training roster. So that would kind of be the rest of that, the rest of those guys, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so maybe we don't see Argentina bring, especially maybe someone like a Conte who had kind of a frustrating season there, losing in the quarterfinals in Brazil for Sada Cruzeiro, and Luciano DeCheco, very long season. That was successful, at least for them. But yeah, Argentina's interesting because in theory, if you break down their service reception, they could be a crappy team if their system, if they're playing a lot of high ball stuff. They're outside hitters and opposite, like Bruno Lima, like he's not going to beat you by himself on high balls, no way. So, but like you said, it's so hard to do. It sounds easy to do, but I mean, Santiago Donani had another season leading in Italy, like making like Leon and Namir Abdelaziz just passing their serves like too easily. Like what are teams at the bottom half of the VNL going to do against Santiago Donani? They're not going to be able to break his reception. So yeah, they're a really fun team to watch though too. I kind of selfishly hope Matias Sanchez is the player for most of VNL, because he is incredibly entertaining to watch as a setter.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably going to see a mixture of Matias Sanchez and Nicolas Uriarte for Argentina. Do I think that DeCheco is going to be one of playing in those matches? Absolutely not. And this is not from me knowing anything, just watching his demeanor usually on the court, and that it's like he looks like he's drank a few beers before every match just to loosen up. Now I don't know this from any fact whatsoever, so don't go saying there that I'm like spreading these rumors, right? But like he looks like a guy that. He's never been a guy to me that struck to me like I'm in it for the grind. He's a very, very talented setter and arguably one of the best setters in the world. And I think that his ability to he's just one of those natural guys that just turns it on when he wants to. And I mean, that's exactly why Lube won the Superliga this year, because Luciano DeCheco turned it on and started going for it.
Gave Luciano DeCheco and put him in like Jay Blankenau's body, I think that would be by far the best setter in the world.
Absolutely.
But
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Argentina. I feel like the next few teams I'm going to talk about on the future podcast are we're all in this kind of middle molasses of the world rankings. We're definitely better than Australia. We're definitely better than China. We're with Japan, we're with Bulgaria, Argentina,
who do you have
Canada.
coming up right now? Because is Belgium in this?
No.
Okay.
Can you guess who I have next? Because there's an Asian team I haven't mentioned yet.
Iran is going to be higher, I would think. Is Iran at 9?
No, we're at.
I would put Iran at
10, we did 10 and 9. So
we did 10 and 9. So we did Canada and
keep in mind
Argentina.
we have. Think about the teams we have next. France.
Okay, there's
Poland.
France, Poland, Russia, Italy, USA, Brazil, Serbia. So, yeah, I mean, I guess at this point you got to be.
Which one of those teams do you have above Iran?
No, then I guess Iran probably slots in at 8. Do I think that they're going to finish there? No. I think that Italy, depending on the roster that they bring, like if there's no Guantarena, if there's no Guantarena for Italy, I see Italy maybe finishing in the double digits. Like if there's no Guantarena for Italy, it's a rebuilding session.
And I don't think the fact that the bubble's taking place in Italy, though, that could be a factor. But
I mean, if they had fans and stuff, I think it might be. But you're telling me that Guantarena wants to go play 3 games a day as well after having the long season that he did? He's like what 30 something, 30 a lot.
Guantarena is a machine, Everett. He can take it.
Hey man, even LeBron is jumping on that self-care and load management tip, right? So.
I'm more worried about Zaitsev because I feel like Guantarena, at least they have a couple guys, but who are they going to play?
Yeah, I mean, that's another guy, right? Do you think Zaitsev is going to be playing every match? Do you think Zaitsev is going to play more than half the matches for Italy? No. And I can't remember who was saying in the chat that I think they might be doing kind of one of those half and half things as well for Italy. But I mean, I definitely understand. I wouldn't slot Italy in higher than like 7th though.
Yeah. But I don't want to give everything away.
Just yet. Come on. All right.
But I think people can have a pretty good idea of mostly how things will go from here. Because I feel like this middle area is the most interesting to debate.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think on the men's side, it's really, in my opinion, you've got Poland and Russia. And then there's a step down from there. And then you've got kind of Brazil. Like I don't know if Brazil's kind of just scattered for me right now. Like they don't have that. They just don't have the athletes that they did kind of in the 2000s, and obviously they're going to be a team, but like, I don't know. Like I think they'll finish on the podium, but I'm not entirely sure what color.
I mean, they still have Bruno, Lucas, Isaac Santos, Lucarelli, Leal, Alan Souza, Wallace, Mike.
Yeah, okay.
Thales Haas, Thiago Brent.
But I still don't see that being as good as what Russia and Poland brings to the table. I really don't. Maybe like for player, no, but maybe I guess if you look at it like a Canada point of view, like their tactics and how the Brazilian national team plays, absolutely. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting.
I would say top 15 for sure. Poland and Russia would be better, but if you're just going top 7, I think that's a lot closer for Brazil.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, Brazil's going to play teams tough anyways, right? They're the most skilled team in the world. They're the best tactical team in the world as well too, generally. So I think it's really just like what kind of physicality can they bring to the table? And I don't know, Russia and Poland are physical.
Yeah. So Everett, anything else you want to go over? Talk about VNL pending topics. I think we're playing Canada USA on the first day.
Yeah, I actually we can jump over to the schedule right now. I don't think it's the entire schedule because I've just got it on Google. Actually, we can go to the official like VNL schedule. Just to start it off. But yeah, absolutely, Canada USA to kick things off is going to be phenomenal. Also, just a shout out to anyone who cares. I will probably be I will be. Thanks a lot, Volleyball World. An internal server error when you try to bring up the schedule. I will be doing a preview for the women's national team as well too, because they are going to be competing in their first ever Volleyball Nations League, which is hella exciting. We've talked about it before, Dan, that this was hands down the best year for the Canadian women.
I know, that was so lucky
ever. And it's really a new dawn of the Canadian women's national team. So that's going to be exciting. Of course, yeah, gender. Let's just toggle the men. All right, this is what we got looking for. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically it goes like men 3 days or women 3 days, men 3 days, women 3 days, men 3 days. I think that's the schedule.
Yep.
So for the men's team, it goes USA, Argentina, Brazil, Wow. Three bangers of a match to start things off. That's going to be difficult for sure, especially since the team is kind of going to be just getting back together at that point.
Yeah, we'll see. Sometimes it's good to play the good teams at the beginning, catch one of them on their off days before they hit a groove.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Then it
We'll
goes.
see. That Argentina feels like a trap game, though.
100%. It's a trap game. But you know what? Let's just get it rid of like out of the way early, and then then we can take on other teams later on. But as I've said, we have very good history of taking on the USA in the first match of a tournament, looking back to the 2016 Olympics. And it might be a kind of let's figure it out game for the USA without Aaron Russell out there. So I think obviously that one's going to be a marquee matchup no matter what. I think all three of these games really are. Then you go into the next three games. Iran, Bulgaria, Italy, and I think this one is really important for that third place or that middle pack because it's all teams in that same area as Canada. I would love to see us go 3-0 here, right? If I think that there's the potential of potentially sweeping that second block of matches, that would be great.
I think we have to if Canada wants to make an actual run at going to the final six. That's going to be the make or break. If they don't win all three, then I think that kind of prospect is probably over.
Yeah, I don't know if the final six is necessarily the goal for this.
It's not, but it's in the cards, I think, right?
100%, absolutely. Like when they're at their best, they're one of the best and they can beat anyone, right? But I do think that it's going to take a little bit of time to get there and to get things rolling on this team.
Plus, remember, with Nations League, we do have a lot of world ranking points on the line here. So it's not like there's nothing to these games, really.
You're right. The third block, Slovenia, Russia, France. That one's going to be another interesting one, too. We don't have I can't tell you the last time or if we've ever played Slovenia. So that one's going to be an interesting one. I almost think that we're going to have a hard time with Slovenia because, first of all, their entire system was built by Glenn Hoag, right? When he was coaching at ACH, or at the time it was Bled, but now it's Ljubljana in Slovenia, right? So I think that's going to be a tough one. And they play a very skilled game with Sabul and Earnout. Like I love watching the way Slovenia plays, and I've loved watching them at the European Championships the past few cycles now. They're always electric to watch, and they're always fun. So I think that one's going to be a good game. And then Russia and France, like that's two of the best teams there. Russia obviously is going to be a tough one. They're absolutely loaded, and France plays very similar to us. Like obviously our system is based quite a bit off the French system. Glenn Hoag coached there for a long time. He was assistant on the French national team before coming back to Canada. There's a lot of parallels there, so it's really going to depend on which players either side is putting on. Like are we going to be seeing Engabeth and Antoniuti for France, or are we going to be seeing some other people in there? Poland, obviously that's going to be weird, but then like our second the last bit of the schedule for Canada is where we're really going to start to run, which I think is actually perfect for looking at the Olympics, right? Because I think we might get beat up a little bit in the first half, but then after Poland, you've got Germany, Japan, Netherlands, Australia, and then Serbia. And to me, in my eyes, depending on maybe not Serbia, but the Germany, Japan, Netherlands, and Australia, those are all must-win games. And must-win games in the sense of it's now we need to know how to win, right? Maybe we were figuring out our systems and figuring out, getting gelled again in those earlier games because like we have to basically run the gauntlet of good teams throughout the early schedule. But once we get to that point and we have to play those four teams, I would love to see us kind of sweep the run the table for the last 5 games of Nations League and just win outright those last 5 games, no matter if it's to get into the final 6 or not.
Yeah, that would be a really good ending. And like you kind of mentioned earlier, it actually is probably a benefit to play those teams at the beginning, also due to the fact that maybe some of the star players for a lot of the top countries who had their top players playing in the top clubs around the world will skip the first half of Nations League, join in on the later date. But if Canada's already played them, that's a huge advantage, especially if we're bringing our full strong roster from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be perfectly honest, when I'm looking at this Nations League year, it's really not about, especially because we're not playing at home at all. So there's not that like for me, there's always that extra pressure to have a great showing at home. Put on a show for the fans, make sure that, that's always when we get TV time on CBC, like make sure that it's a good show for that. But just because it's in this bubble and it's the schedule is the way it is, it's going to be a grueling schedule, 3 games on, 3 games off, 3 games on, 3 games off. No other sport but volleyball would make a schedule like this, because obviously the old whites who run the show at the FiveOne VB don't actually care about the athletes. They just use them as expendable, almost like tissues, but I digress. Yeah, it's gonna be a long slog, and the goal really, especially like if this was a normal and VNL season and we hadn't lost the entire last national team season to COVID, it would be a different story, right? But because the last time we've seen this team together was a year and a half ago. I know they did train together a little bit in Gatineau last year, but it's just not the same as getting ready for an event. And you know what? If there's one thing that I believe in this team the most, it's their ability to come together and find ways to win together, and that takes some time. It's going to take some time to get it going. So let's not be surprised if things start off poorly on the statistic end, because I believe fully that they will figure things out by the end of the road.
Faith, Everett. Come on. Canada's going to come out of the gate strong, going to crush a few teams, grab a few wins.
You know what? And I think so too, and I would be happy if they did that. But what I'm saying is, like, let's not be surprised if the other side happens. A, let's not be surprised, and B, let's not act like it's the end of the world either, because you know what? As the 2019 world champions Toronto Raptors know, it's not how strong you start, it's really how you finish. So that's what I have to say.
And that's the story of the summer for sure. Everyone's building up towards the Olympics, European Championships, but I still think I'm really excited. Just like you said, it's fun to see the guys in national team jerseys. It's fun to see this competition that we haven't had the opportunity to see in 2 years. It's crazy. So I it's just going to be fun. We'll see if the FIVB has any cool production stuff they're doing, if they're trying anything new. They've had 2 years here to think about things. So hopefully they bring out something new. And I'm looking forward to seeing the storylines, because there's going to be some fun ones.
Yeah. It's going to be great. Like, all of the games, the earliest they start is 8 a.m. That's general time. So that's not even Eastern time. Yikes.
It's perfect for the Europeans.
Ah, great. This is going to be, you know what? My only saving grace is, no, that sucks too. So I'm going to have to move houses and watch VNL at the same time. That's what I've got to do. Because VNL starts on the 14th, and does it start on the 14th? No. 28th. Where was I getting the 14th from? Okay.
So you got to move fast here.
Yeah, I mean, I get keys to my girlfriend and I get our keys in the new place on the 15th. So things get started for the women's on the 25th and men on the 28th. Yeah. So, okay, I've got 10 days to get things set up and good to go.
Plenty of time.
Absolutely. I'm stoked to just watch. Like, literally, Canada is going to be playing every single day for how many days? 25th to
June 28th, so almost like 2 months.
A month. May 25th
month,
to June.
Yes,
June,
yes,
June,
a month.
June 28th is a month. Hey, it's late over there in Europe, right? So, but yeah, like it's literally going to be a Canada game a day. So, yeah, it's going to be easy.
It's going to be easy to watch.
I don't know if it's going to be easy. It's going to be a lot to watch, but it's going to be fun. That's for sure.
Okay. For sure. I'm looking forward to it too. And before this podcast goes totally off the rails, why don't we end it here, Everett? Yeah. Thank you for having me on Twitch. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Make sure to check out Everett's podcast as well, because you've had some fantastic guests there. We mentioned the one with TJ Sanders a few times. I think that was one of my favorite podcasts of the few months. So well done for that.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, let's go. We'll definitely have lots of discussion going on. And any Canadian fans, join our Discord, because we need to outnumber the other countries by more than we already do.
Any fans, if you're listening to this and you're a volleyball nerd, come join the Discord. Today we got over 130 members. It seems like there's like literally now every single day I open it up and there's multiple tabs, multiple people having different conversations in all the channels. We've got people from literally around the world. So it doesn't matter if you're Canadian, you're American, you're Brazilian, Japanese, whatever it is. Come join the Discord if you're volleyball nerds like us.
All right, awesome.
Thanks,
Everett, talk to you next time.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Appreciate it. Peace, guys.